A vaccination in Singapore might be voluntary, but there's ongoing debate over whether people who aren't vaccinated should face some restrictions. For a closer look, we're joined by Assistant Professor Voo Teck Chuan from the NUS Centre for Biomedical Ethics at the Yong School of Medicine. Thank you, Professor, for joining us this evening. Firstly, Minister Lawrence Wong mentioned certain perks for those who are vaccinated, like being able to travel and less testing. How effective do you think these incentives will be?
So I think this is an increasing topic of interest among policymakers around the world, not just in Singapore, but in Europe, for example, right? To firstly, to open economies as well as societies. I think most people in Singapore will still want to get vaccinated in order to protect themselves as well as their family members and other people. So I think it's important to say that this is still the most important consideration for getting vaccinated. Of course, in any given society, there would be people who will not want to get vaccinated for many reasons. They are hesitant about vaccines or they are undecided and so forth. So this kind of incentive might give them that push to get vaccinated. But at the end of the day, I think the science should still drive the policy. There are still many critical unknowns about the vaccine. We should remember that it's issued under emergency authorization. We don't know how efficacious it is in real life, real conditions in terms of limiting transmission and so forth. How long the duration of protection it is, how many booster vaccines you will need. So I think the science should drive the policy at the end of the day.
That being the case, Dr. Voo, could people then who aren't vaccinated face real restrictions then?
I think firstly, it is important to recognize that it is not unethical and unfair to impose different restrictions on non-vaccinated and vaccinated people. Already we do that in a lot of contexts. For example, if a traveler who's coming from a yellow fever endemic country into Singapore, he or she will need to produce a yellow fever certificate in order to enter the country. Otherwise, that person will need to be quarantined. So we are, I think, potentially moving into a world where vaccination would be required in order to do particular activities. And it's important to remember that at the end of the day, freedom of movement, to travel, to socialize, to work, to participate in mass events is a very important freedom that we all enjoy. And that kind of freedom should be facilitated as much as possible. So vaccination is one strategy, but there's also the try and tested method of testing, isolation, and contact tracing.
So just to be clear, you're saying that it's fair and ethical that if someone chooses not to be vaccinated, then they are, in a sense, giving up certain freedoms?
So I'm not saying that. I think that the question is how much of a burden, how much of a restrictions they will face in terms of their movement hindrance. So potentially you can have a world where people who have vaccination, they might have particular exemptions from some measures like testing, might have shorter quarantine, for example, whereas people who do not get vaccinated for whatever reasons might need to get tested. But even then, I think the safer strategy, at least in this context, given the scientific uncertainty, is to, even though if you are vaccinated, you should still get vaccinated. You should still get tested even if you're not quarantined.
And Dr. Voo, what about those individuals who perhaps can't be vaccinated because of medical conditions?
Yeah, so this is one of the main reasons why people cannot get vaccinated, right? Because of medical reasons. There are also reasons because of lack of access or they're not on the priority list. So this is one of the important implications we need to think about. In a world where vaccination becomes a requirement to do particular things, it will be potentially an unequal world between the have and the have-nots.
All right, Dr. Voo, thank you very much for sharing your perspectives with us on this topic. Assistant Professor Voo Teck Chuan there from NUS.